Well, good morning, and thank you for your kind introduction, and it's great to be with you at this conference today. I'm also truly humbled to be with you because there's nothing more precious than protecting the natural world. And whilst I don't want to draw attention to my age, least because it's April Fool's Day in a few weeks and I will turn 49, the sad fact that in my lifetime we have witnessed close to a 69% drop in wildlife populations. And despite what my stepchildren say, I'm not an old man, and yet since I was born, freshwater populations alone have dropped by an average of close to 83%. Where I was born into a world of abundant rhinos, leopards, tigers and gorillas, the next generation will find a planet where 1 million species are threatened with extinction. Where I was born into a world of expansive coral reefs and vast forests, if I have grandchildren, they could find habitat loss on an unimaginable scale. And where I was born into a world where many did not know better, today we all do. And we know that biodiversity has been declining at a rapid rate because of human activities, such as land use changes, pollution and climate change. And it's brought some species to the brink of extinction. And successive governments in the UK and across the world have failed to put in place the measures demanded by our collective responsibility for this loss. So we need to act now, urgently, to protect ecosystems. And if the moral argument wasn't enough, we all know that degradation can have real impacts on global GDP. And there is an irony here, because for centuries, natural capital assets, meadows, woodlands, wetlands, have been allowed to degrade as an accepted cost of economic growth. And the conflict between growth and the environment is, I believe, a false dichotomy. The environment is the foundation of our economy and society. And we need to mobilise the resources and finance to tackle the problems of today so that tomorrow might be better. Now, whether you're from the Brecon Beacons National Park, whether you are focused on ESG in a large corporate or an investment manager or banker, from WWF or a sixth form or university student, I know that people in this room have the passion, expertise and leadership required to meet the enormous challenges ahead. And today I want to speak to you about money and how we channel it to tackling this shared challenge. And this is a topic that's very close to my heart. For 4.5 years, I was the UK's City Minister dealing with green finance. I'm now the Chief Secretary responsible for public spending across the UK government. The truth is that many international targets have not and are not being met. That is a truth completely at odds with our collective aspirations. But led from the front by the Prime Minister, this government recognises that global ecosystems are vital to our collective health, well-being and economic prosperity, and that biodiversity loss is a global issue which requires a global solution. And our vision for the environment is an economic vision. It is grounded in the cost and benefits of action or inaction. In 2019, my department, the Treasury, commissioned an independent global review on the economics of biodiversity led by Professor Das Gupta. And the central conclusion of his review was that nature and the biodiversity that underpins it ultimately sustains economies, livelihoods and well-being. The estimated stock of UK natural capital has most recently been valued at £1.8 trillion. So that's likely to be an underestimate. And with the global stock of natural capital per person having declined by nearly 40% between 1992 and 2014, we must invest in and maintain it. Alternatively, failing to act risks long-term prosperity, with around 54% of global GDP being moderately or highly dependent on nature. So by 2030, we want to halt and reverse global biodiversity loss. It's a target that can, must be met. How? Well, it starts at home. We've taken this world-leading action here in the UK because we are resolved to being the first generation to leave the environment in a better condition than we inherited it. And in January, the Prime Minister set out his vision in our environmental improvement plan. It provides a blueprint, not just to halt the decline of nature in our country, but to reverse it. Our action is led by our world-leading, legally binding target in England to halt species decline by 2030, then to reverse the decline by 2042. We have also set legally binding targets to reduce the risk of species extinction by 2042 and restore or create more than 500,000 hectares of wildlife-rich habitat also by 2042. We are investing more than £750 million in tree planting and peatland restoration through our Nature for Climate Fund, launching the Species Survival Fund, creating, restoring and extending around 70 areas for wildlife, protecting 30% of our land and sea for nature, supporting a transformation in the management of 70% of our countryside by incentivising farmers to adopt more nature-friendly farming practices, reducing the key drivers of species decline from pollution to climate change, and taking targeted action to prevent the loss of our rarest and fastest declining species. And that is a lot of action that will increase the prosperity of our country and work in conjunction with our international efforts, such as that taken in December when 196 countries agreed a landmark new global deal for nature at COP15, the Global Biodiversity Framework. Now, my colleague, the Treasury Lords Minister Baroness Penn, she was there, signifying the ongoing fundamental importance of nature and biodiversity to the Treasury. And she tells me of the strong representation from businesses and financial institutions that she met with in Montreal. The framework recognises that the shift to a nature-positive future cannot be accomplished without greater investment. And that is why in that framework, we, both governments and the private sector, have committed to mobilising at least $200 billion in investment each year. Now, of course, while government cannot and should not try to fix everything by themselves, we will have a huge role to play. We simply can't turn the tide on this issue without the sums that many governments have at their disposal. Under our COP26 presidency, we got 145 countries to sign the Glasgow Leaders' Declaration and agree to halt and reverse deforestation and land degradation by 2030. And a year later, at COP27, we made more than £150 million available to protect rainforests and natural habitats, including the Congo Basin and Amazon. We have launched a £500 million Blue Planet Fund to support developing countries to protect the marine environment and develop sustainable marine economies. We committed to triple climate adaptation from £500 million in 2019 to £1.5 billion by 2025. And very importantly, we also affirmed our £11.6 billion commitment on international climate finance, spending at least £3 billion on solutions that protect and restore nature. And these investments are seeing tangible results. Between 2011 and 2021, we provided £250 million through our Forest Governance Markets and Climate Programme, which helped countries tackle illegal logging, illegal deforestation, and weak governance. And the success of this programme means that today, 100% of Indonesia's timber exports are sourced from independently audited factories and forests. In 2005, just 20% of Indonesia's timber was legal. Our international development strategy also committed to ensuring our official development assistance becomes nature positive. This means aligning it with the international goal to halt and reverse biodiversity loss by 2030 and the Global Biodiversity Framework. However, public funds alone will not be sufficient to close the biodiversity gap of $700 billion. While over half of the world's GDP reliant on nature, private capital represents just 17% of total investments in nature. We must therefore rewire that global financial system to align with our ambitions. And as I mentioned a few moments ago, governments have a key role. In the UK, currently the government is the largest investor in nature recovery in the UK. But our entire economy, indeed the entire global economy, is dependent on nature. There simply would be no economy without nature. So it makes sense that private investment would be warranted and welcomed. And that is why we've announced a target to raise at least 500 million in private finance to support nature's recovery every year by 2027 in England, rising to more than 1 billion a year by 2030. And our environmental improvement plan and green finance strategy set out how we will unlock private sector investment in our domestic natural environment. Nobody here today needs telling that this will not happen without supportive policies. Too often we hear that the standards and rules for investing in the full range of carbon and nature recovery projects that need investment are undeveloped or unclear. We cannot expect farmers and conservation experts to commit to projects or investors to mobilise resources at significant scale without a robust, stable and reliable market framework. Nor can we expect the public and environmental experts to trust these markets where there are concerns about a lack of transparency and the potential for greenwashing. And that is why we called for evidence last year to support the development of an updated green finance strategy. And as part of the strategy, which will launch later this year, we will have a new policy framework for nature markets. This will provide clearer principles and policy guardrails for the development of new nature markets, including new arrangements to accelerate the adoption of robust standards for investing in a broader range of ecosystem services. This strategy will also set out our next steps to build on the momentum generated under our COP26 presidency to strengthen and scale up voluntary carbon markets worldwide, with the UK playing a visible role in championing and supporting high integrity. We have also committed to invest £30 million of de-risking capital into a new private sector blended finance impact fund for domestic nature recovery, the Big Nature Impact Fund. Managed by Federated Hermes and Finance Earth, the fund will crowd in significant levels of private capital through the use of catalytic public investment. The blended capital will catalyse and invest in a portfolio of high-integrity nature projects, generating revenue from ecosystem services such as carbon sequestration, biodiversity and water quality. The investee projects will create biodiverse woodlands, restore peatlands, and create other priority habitats in line with that environmental improvement plan I just set out. By taking a blended finance approach and aggregating these projects up to an investable level, the fund will help lower transaction costs and reduce risks, bringing the risk profile of these projects in line with institutional investors' appetites. And the aim is to develop a track record for private sector investment in nature recovery at scale for others to follow and to help close the funding gap for nature. And it's not just investment we need. It's expertise to deliver the recovery of nature. And let me give a few examples. I'm a great admirer of the work done by the Royal Botanical Gardens through their landscape ecology programme at Wakehurst, seeking to collect high-quality scientific evidence of the value of UK biodiversity, using strong scientific data to inform and influence land management policies across those 4 pillars of carbon, pollinators, water, and nature connectedness. Next month, reflecting my personal constituency interests in Salisbury, I'll be visiting Loddington, the Allerton project in Leicestershire, which has been at the cutting edge of research into sustainable farming methods, biodiversity and habitat creation, and rural landscape management for over 30 years. And in 2021, the Allerton project received funding from our Natural Environment Investment Readiness Fund to support them in creating an innovative standard for hedgerow, carbon, and leverage private investment into nature recovery on farmland. This is painstaking work. This is creating new frontiers for the way that we use our land. And it's research like theirs that can be used to inform best practice on the ground and help us get policy right at the national level. Because ultimately, we all need to pull together in the same direction if we're going to tackle this existential issue. And it's for this reason that we're taking strong action to green the entire financial system. It's a fundamental step in meeting our climate and environmental goals. Of all global financial centres, firms listed on the London Stock Exchange have the highest sustainability disclosure rate. And the exchange itself is the first global exchange group to commit to net zero through the business ambition for 1.5 degrees. London is the leading hub globally for green finance, ranked first in the world for a third consecutive time, according to the Global Green Finance Index. And that accolade has been specifically attributed to the government's action on sustainable finance. So what is that action? We've taken leading action to enable the creation of global market-led task force for nature-related financial disclosures, TNFD. We're one of the biggest funders, but what is innovative about TNFD is that it will afford investors the opportunity to make more investments in nature, helping bridge that $700 billion gap that I mentioned. The TNFD is on track to publish its final nature risk management and disclosure framework later this year and will support businesses and financial institutions to assess, manage and disclose their risks, impacts and dependencies on nature and take action. The UK government remains fully committed to supporting its progress and encouraging market engagement and capacity building through the TNFD's UK National Consultation Group. And once institutions begin generating decision-grade data and disclosures on their nature-related risks, impacts and dependencies, we expect to see the investment start rolling in. We were also the first country in the world to commit to mandatory task force on climate-related financial disclosures, or TCFD, across the economy. And these rules have now been introduced with the rules and guidance for publicly quoted companies and large private companies coming into force by April 2022. But we can't just stop there. We plan to build on TCFD requirements with new economy-wide sustainability disclosure requirements, or SDR, which will see businesses reporting on how they on their impact and what climate and the environment impacts will be. SDR will also incorporate the global baseline standards for sustainability reporting being developed by the International Sustainability Standards Board. And as committed to in the first Green Finance Strategy, we have mainstreamed climate change into the work of the UK's financial regulators. And this is resulting in real action. Just last year, the Bank of England published its pioneering climate scenario exercises to assess the resilience of the financial system to climate-related risks. Now, it is this action that has led London to become a leading hub for sovereign green bonds globally, with issuances, I'm pleased to say, on my watch, totaling more than £10 billion from worldwide issuers, including from Chile, Egypt, Mexico, Hong Kong and Fiji, channeling billions into the green revolution globally. The UK government will have raised a total of £26 billion in green gilts by the end of this financial year, having launched its green financing programme in 2021. That's huge sums of money being made available through green finance, which itself is being fueled by our actions. But as ever, there is much more to do. So we in government are up for the challenge. I want to share a reflection before I close. It's that it's impossible to know what the consequences of nature and biodiversity loss will be for humans. But we do expect that life will become harder, that food could become scarcer, and wildlife rarer. And we do know that the clock is ticking down to the point of no return. And if we want to leave this world in a better place than we found it, we have to take action today. History would judge our failure harshly. But I believe that if we pull together, we can overcome the challenges and ensure our children and grandchildren inherit a thriving world. So thank you very much for the opportunity to be here to start your deliberations today. I wish you all well, and I look forward to continuing to do all I can from my vantage point in government to assist with this agenda. Thank you very much indeed.